Ladies and gentlemen, there are moments when heaven interrupts the noise of life to remind us that words are not harmless. They are carriers of power, containers of destiny, and instruments that can either build altars or erect barriers. Tonight is one of those moments. Some of you have walked into this space feeling the weight of spoken negativity, whispered judgments, careless statements, or inherited curses that seem to linger over your progress, your family, your finances, and your peace. But hear this clearly: no word spoken against you is greater than the word that God has already spoken over you. We are standing at a prophetic intersection where spiritual authority meets divine intervention. What has been declared in anger, released in ignorance, or spoken with malicious intent does not have the final say. You were not created to be a victim of conversations you were not present for, nor a prisoner of labels that heaven never endorsed. There is a higher court, a superior verdict, and a greater voice that overrides every negative pronouncement. This is not just a gathering. It is a moment of recalibration, where your mouth aligns with God's agenda and your spirit rises to enforce what heaven has authorized. Tonight, faith will not be passive. It will be vocal. It will be deliberate. It will confront every word designed to limit you and strip it of its power. What once echoed as a curse will be silenced, and what tried to follow you into this season will lose its legal right to remain. As you listen, prepare your heart to shift from defense to dominion. You are about to engage in spiritual warfare that restores clarity, reclaims momentum, and reestablishes divine order over your life. This is the moment where harmful words are nullified, destinies are realigned, and your future begins to speak louder than your past. Words are not casual sounds released into the air. They are spiritual forces that travel, settle, and produce results. From the beginning, creation itself responded to spoken command, not silent intention. When words are released, they carry authority, intention, and alignment, either with divine order or with opposition to it. Every word spoken becomes a seed, and every seed seeks soil where it can take root and multiply. This is why lives are shaped not only by actions, but by declarations, conversations, and repeated phrases spoken over time. What is consistently spoken begins to define what is consistently experienced. Many people underestimate the power of words because they cannot see them. Yet they feel their impact daily. A single statement spoken in anger can linger for years, shaping confidence, identity, and expectation. Likewise, a word spoken in faith can unlock doors that effort alone could never open. Words have the ability to authorize movement in the spirit, giving permission for progress or access for resistance. When words align with truth, they build, establish, and fortify. When they align with fear, doubt, or malice, they fracture, delay, and restrain. Spiritual authority is closely connected to language because authority is exercised through command. Silence never built a destiny, and passivity never shifted an atmosphere. What you speak consistently becomes what you believe, and what you believe eventually becomes what you live. This is why environments change when language changes, and outcomes shift when declarations are corrected. Words are not merely expressions of emotion. They are instructions sent ahead into the future, preparing conditions to either cooperate with purpose or resist it. Every spoken word carries alignment. It aligns either with heaven's agenda or with narratives that oppose it. There is no neutral speech. Even casual statements shape inner posture and expectation. When negative language is repeated, it trains the mind to expect limitation, loss, and delay. When faith-filled language is spoken, it conditions the spirit to anticipate movement, favor, and breakthrough. Over time, words establish patterns, and patterns create cycles that feel automatic, but are actually authorized by speech. Authority increases when words are spoken with awareness. Speaking without understanding can unknowingly reinforce what should be resisted. This is why some people pray for change while continually speaking against their own progress. Their words cancel their requests, not because faith is absent, but because authority is divided. Unified speech produces unified results. When belief, declaration, and expectation align, resistance loses ground because it no longer has permission to remain. Words also create spiritual boundaries. What is spoken determines what is allowed to cross into your life. Fear-filled words open access to anxiety. Hopeless words invite stagnation. Confident declarations establish borders that confusion cannot cross. When words are aligned with truth, they act as guards, protecting peace, clarity, and direction. This is why certain cycles break the moment language changes, not because circumstances immediately shift, but because authority has been reclaimed. Generational patterns are often sustained by generational language. Statements repeated from one generation to another become accepted realities, even when they were never divinely assigned. Phrases like, "This always happens to us," or "We never get ahead," carry more power than many realize. They function as verbal contracts, renewing permission for the same outcomes to repeat. When those words are challenged and replaced, cycles begin to weaken because their authorization has been revoked. Words spoken over you do not have authority unless they are accepted, believed, or left unchallenged. Silence in the face of negative declarations often communicates agreement. Authority is enforced when opposing words are confronted with truth-filled declarations that carry greater alignment. When higher truth is spoken, lower narratives lose influence, not instantly disappearing, but gradually losing their grip as their source of reinforcement is removed. Every season requires a shift in language because new levels demand new declarations. Old words cannot sustain new assignments. As responsibilities increase, speech must mature to support expansion. This is why growth often feels uncomfortable at first. It demands that familiar language be abandoned. Complaints must give way to commands. Doubt must be replaced with certainty. Survival language must be exchanged for dominion language. Words shape internal atmosphere before they ever affect external reality. Long before change becomes visible, it becomes audible. What you speak in private trains your spirit for what you expect in public. This is why intentional speech is not optional for those who desire progress. Authority is not something you wait to receive, it is something you exercise. Through aligned language. When words are spoken with clarity, conviction, and faith, they begin rearranging unseen structures, preparing visible results that follow the sound of what was declared. Negative declarations do not become permanent. Simply because they were spoken, they gain influence when they are left uncontested. Every word released carries intent, but intent alone does not determine outcome. Authority responds to alignment, and alignment can be interrupted, challenged, and reversed. This is why no spoken curse, judgment, or limiting statement has the right to remain active when confronted by faith. Faith is not passive belief. It is active resistance against anything that contradicts divine purpose. Many negative words are spoken casually, without awareness of their impact. Others are released intentionally, fueled by jealousy, anger, fear, or ignorance. Regardless of the source, a negative declaration seeks agreement. It looks for an internal echo that repeats it, believes it, or accepts it as truth. Once agreement is formed, the word begins to operate, shaping thoughts, influencing decisions, and subtly directing outcomes. But when agreement is withdrawn, the word loses momentum and authority. Revocation begins with recognition. You cannot nullify what you refuse to acknowledge. Many people live under the weight of words they no longer remember hearing. Yet those words continue to speak through patterns of hesitation, self-doubt, and delayed progress. Faith brings awareness, and awareness empowers response. When a negative declaration is identified, it can be confronted, corrected, and replaced with higher truth. Faith operates through the mouth because authority is enforced through speech. It is not enough to mentally disagree with negative words. They must be verbally overridden. Silence allows repetition, but declaration interrupts it. When faith speaks, it establishes a new narrative that challenges the old one. This is not denial of reality, it is realignment of authority. Faith does not ignore circumstances. It addresses the unseen permissions that allowed those circumstances to exist. Negative declarations often disguise themselves as facts. Statements like, "This is just how life is," or "Nothing ever changes," feel reasonable, but they quietly enforce limitation. Faith exposes these statements as assumptions rather than truths. Once exposed, they can be dismantled. Faith-filled declarations do not need to be loud to be effective. They need to be consistent. Repetition of truth weakens repetition of fear. Some declarations are inherited rather than personally spoken. Generational words passed down through families become internalized expectations. These words shape identity before conscious choice is developed. Faith challenges inherited narratives by refusing to carry forward language that no longer serves purpose. When a person decides to speak differently, they interrupt cycles that have lasted decades. Not through rebellion, but through realignment. Revoking negative words also requires emotional discipline. Words spoken during pain often carry more weight because they are tied to strong feelings. Faith does not suppress emotion. It refuses to let emotion dictate authority. Pain may explain why a word was spoken, but it does not justify its continued influence. Faith honors feelings without surrendering to them. Replacement is a critical part of nullification. Removing negative declarations without establishing new ones creates a vacuum. Faith fills that space with intentional language that reinforces identity, direction, and expectation. The mind adapts to what it hears most often, and when faith becomes the dominant voice, old words lose relevance. Over time, what once triggered fear begins to feel unfamiliar, not because circumstances have fully changed, but because authority has shifted. Consistency is what transforms revocation into freedom. One declaration can interrupt a moment, but sustained faith rewrites patterns. Every time truth is spoken, it reinforces a new agreement. Over time, the nervous system, thought patterns, and responses adjust to the new narrative. What once felt impossible begins to feel attainable, not because effort increased, but because resistance decreased. Negative words cannot survive where faith maintains presence. They require neglect, silence, and repetition to remain active. Faith denies them all three. By staying attentive, vocal, and intentional, faith ensures that harmful declarations are not just challenged once, but continuously overridden. This ongoing process is not exhausting. It is empowering because it returns control to the one speaking. Faith does not argue with negativity, it outlasts it. Every time faith speaks, it reinforces authority that was already available but unused. As declarations change, perception shifts. As perception shifts, decisions follow. As decisions align, outcomes begin to reflect the new authority that has been established. What once felt like an invisible barrier begins to dissolve as its verbal foundation is removed. Divine truth operates from a higher realm than human opinion, emotional reaction, or spoken judgment. While words released by people can carry weight, they do not possess ultimate authority unless they are allowed to override truth. Truth does not compete, it supersedes. It stands independent of circumstance, timing, or opposition. When truth is introduced, it exposes false narratives and weakens the influence of every word that contradicts it. This is why no spoken curse, limitation, or accusation can endure when truth is consistently declared and believed. Many limiting words survive not because they are powerful, but because truth is absent from the conversation. Silence creates space for distortion to sound credible. When truth is withheld, lies gain familiarity, and familiarity often gets mistaken for reality. Divine truth interrupts this process by reestablishing what was always intended. It does not negotiate with error, it corrects it. Once truth is heard, deception loses its advantage, even if circumstances have not yet visibly shifted. Truth carries authority because it originates from an unchanging source. Opinions fluctuate, emotions shift, and human declarations are often influenced by incomplete information. Truth, however, remains consistent regardless of who speaks it or who resists it. When truth is spoken, it aligns the atmosphere with what is already established rather than what is currently experienced. This alignment begins internally, reshaping belief systems before it ever alters external conditions. False limitations often present themselves as protection. Statements like, "Don't expect too much," or "Stay realistic," can sound wise, yet they quietly enforce ceilings that were never divinely assigned. Truth challenges these ceilings by revealing capacity beyond comfort. It does not deny responsibility or effort, it expands perspective. When truth is embraced, it redefines what is possible, replacing fear-based caution with faith-informed confidence. Truth also restores identity. Many negative words attack who a person believes they are rather than what they can do. Labels spoken in moments of conflict or failure can attach themselves to identity if left unchallenged. Truth confronts these labels by separating behavior from being. It affirms worth without excusing error and potential without ignoring growth. As identity stabilizes in truth, the power of condemning words weakens because they no longer find agreement. Exposure is one of truth's greatest functions. It reveals not only what is false, but why it was believed. When truth surfaces, it brings clarity, showing how certain narratives formed and why they were sustained. This awareness breaks the cycle of self-blame and confusion, replacing it with understanding and intentional change. Truth does not shame, it illuminates. In illumination, freedom becomes possible. Truth spoken repeatedly becomes a framework for decision making. When choices are filtered through truth rather than fear or past experience, patterns begin to change. Old reactions lose their hold because new understanding reshapes response. Truth informs patience, strengthens resilience, and sharpens discernment. It does not rush outcomes, but it steadily redirects momentum toward alignment. Even internal dialogue must submit to truth. Self-talk influenced by disappointment or comparison can quietly undermine confidence. Truth confronts these internal narratives, replacing harsh judgments with grounded perspective. This internal correction is essential because what is believed internally eventually manifests externally. When inner language aligns with truth, actions become more intentional and less reactive. Truth does not require perfect conditions to operate. It functions in uncertainty, tension, and transition. It remains effective even when emotions resist it. Over time, truth outlasts feelings, not by suppressing them, but by providing stability through them. This stability becomes a foundation upon which growth can occur without collapse. When truth is spoken aloud, it reinforces alignment between belief and declaration. Hearing truth activates it in a way silent agreement often does not. Spoken truth challenges atmosphere, interrupts internal resistance, and reinforces clarity. The more truth is spoken, the less room false narratives have to linger. Eventually, limitations that once felt immovable begin to feel unsupported, as though they are standing without foundation. Divine truth does not need to be defended aggressively. It needs to be upheld consistently. Its strength is revealed through endurance rather than force. As truth remains present, other voices grow quieter. Accusations lose urgency. Fear loses credibility. What once demanded constant attention begins to fade as truth establishes itself as the dominant reference point. Spiritual warfare is not chaos or conflict without direction. It is the intentional process of restoring order where disorder has been permitted. Alignment is the foundation of momentum. When alignment is disrupted, progress slows, clarity fades, and effort produces limited results. Warfare becomes necessary not because movement is impossible, but because resistance has been authorized through misalignment, unchallenged words, or passive agreement with opposition. Restoring alignment is not about striving harder, it is about reestablishing rightful authority. Momentum is often mistaken for speed, but true momentum is sustained movement supported by purpose. When spiritual alignment is off, people push forward, but feel constantly resisted. Fatigue increases while results diminish. Warfare addresses this imbalance by identifying what is resisting flow and confronting it at its source. This process requires awareness, intentionality, and consistency. Without alignment, even well-intended actions feel heavy, but once alignment is restored, effort becomes effective rather than exhausting. Misalignment can occur subtly. It often begins with small compromises in language, belief, or expectation. Over time, these compromises accumulate, creating an environment where resistance feels normal. Spiritual warfare challenges this normalization. It refuses to accept stagnation as standard and confronts the unseen agreements that allowed it to form. Warfare is not against people or circumstances. It is against the permissions that give those circumstances influence. Restoration begins internally. Before external conditions shift, internal posture must realign. Fear must yield to confidence, doubt to certainty, and passivity to authority. This internal realignment is essential because outward change without inward alignment often collapses under pressure. Warfare strengthens internal structure, ensuring that when momentum returns, it is sustainable rather than temporary. Alignment also restores clarity. Confusion thrives in disordered environments. When alignment is corrected, priorities sharpen and distractions lose influence. Decisions become more decisive, not because all information is available, but because direction is clearer. Warfare clears mental and emotional interference, allowing focus to return. As focus increases, energy is no longer wasted on unnecessary battles. Spiritual warfare reactivates dormant authority. Many people possess authority they are not using, not because it was taken, but because it was neglected. Warfare reawakens this authority by bringing awareness to what has been allowed to operate without challenge. Once authority is recognized, it can be exercised. Recognition alone begins to shift dynamics. As opposition responds to awareness even before confrontation intensifies. Momentum returns when resistance is addressed at the root. Addressing symptoms without confronting cause creates temporary relief, but not lasting change. Warfare seeks the root, whether it is fear-based thinking, inherited limitations, or repeated negative declarations. When the root is confronted, patterns begin to break. As patterns break, movement becomes natural rather than forced. Alignment also restores timing. When misaligned, people rush or delay, acting out of anxiety rather than discernment. Warfare recalibrates timing by reconnecting action with purpose. This recalibration reduces frustration because actions begin to produce expected outcomes. Progress no longer feels random, it feels directed. Spiritual warfare strengthens endurance. Resistance does not disappear instantly, but aligned authority makes resistance manageable. Instead of feeling overwhelmed, individuals feel equipped. Endurance is built not by avoiding conflict, but by engaging it with clarity. Warfare trains the mind and spirit to remain steady under pressure, preventing regression when challenges arise. Restored alignment also affects relationships and environments. As internal authority strengthens, external dynamics adjust. Boundaries become clearer. Interactions become healthier. Environments that once drained energy begin to support growth. This shift is not forced. It is the natural result of corrected alignment. Momentum is sustained through continued awareness. Warfare is not a one-time event, but an ongoing posture. Alignment must be maintained through intentional language, disciplined thought, and consistent declaration. When alignment is guarded, momentum becomes a constant rather than a fluctuation. Progress continues even during seasons of challenge because authority remains active. Spiritual warfare does not create new purpose. It clears the path for existing purpose to advance. It removes interference rather than inventing direction. As interference is removed, clarity strengthens, confidence increases, and movement accelerates. What once felt blocked begins to open, not because opposition vanished, but because alignment was restored and authority reclaimed. Victory is not enforced by silence. It is established through aligned speech. The voice is not merely a means of expression. It is an instrument of authority. When the voice is aligned with divine purpose, it becomes a governing force that shapes outcomes rather than reacting to them. Many wait for circumstances to change before they speak confidently. But authority does not follow change. It produces it. What is spoken in alignment carries weight beyond emotion, logic, or immediate evidence. Alignment begins internally before it is heard externally. A divided heart produces divided speech, and divided speech weakens authority. When belief, intention, and declaration are unified, the voice carries conviction rather than uncertainty. This unity is what transforms words from hopeful wishes into enforceable commands. The power is not in volume, but in agreement. When the voice speaks from alignment, resistance recognizes legitimacy. Victory requires intentional language. Casual speech often contradicts desired outcomes without awareness. Statements of fear, doubt, or defeat can quietly undermine progress even while effort continues. Aligning the voice means choosing words that reflect truth rather than temporary feeling. This does not deny emotion. It refuses to give emotion authority. When emotion speaks first, authority weakens. When truth leads, emotion adjusts. The voice also trains the mind. What is spoken repeatedly becomes familiar, and what becomes familiar shapes expectation. When aligned declarations are spoken consistently, the mind begins to anticipate success rather than brace for failure. This shift in expectation changes behavior. Decisions become bolder, responses become calmer, and focus becomes clearer. Victory begins to feel natural because the internal environment has been conditioned for it. Aligned speech also confronts opposition. Resistance often persists because it goes unchallenged. Silence can be interpreted as agreement. When the voice speaks with clarity and authority, it disrupts cycles that have relied on passivity. This confrontation is not aggressive, it is confident. Confidence rooted in alignment does not argue, it declares. Declarations establish boundaries that opposition must respect. Victory is enforced through repetition. One declaration initiates change, but consistent speech sustains it. Authority strengthens through use. Just as muscles grow through engagement, authority grows through consistent application. Each time the voice aligns with truth, it reinforces the new order. Over time, what once required effort becomes instinctive because authority has been normalized. The voice also shapes atmosphere. Environments respond to language. Words can create tension or peace, fear or confidence, chaos or order. When aligned speech enters a space, it begins to shift tone and energy. This is why certain rooms feel lighter or heavier, depending on what has been spoken there. Victory is easier to maintain in environments shaped by aligned declarations. Aligned speech restores personal agency. Many feel powerless not because they lack authority, but because they have stopped using their voice intentionally. When the voice is reclaimed, agency returns. Speaking aligned truth reinforces identity and purpose. It reminds the speaker of who they are and what they carry. This reminder strengthens resolve during challenge. The voice must be protected to remain effective. Exposure to constant negativity can erode alignment if not addressed. Guarding the voice involves guarding what influences it. When inputs are filtered, outputs remain strong. This discipline ensures that declarations remain consistent rather than reactive. Victory enforced through aligned speech is not instantaneous, but it is inevitable. Each aligned word builds momentum. Each declaration strengthens structure. Over time, opposition weakens, not because it disappeared, but because it lost authority. When the voice remains aligned, victory becomes the dominant narrative rather than a distant hope. Step into this moment with confidence and unwavering faith. What has been spoken against you does not define you, and what tried to follow you into this season cannot survive where authority is exercised. As you lift your voice in alignment with divine truth, understand that you are not pleading for victory, you are enforcing it. Let every declaration from this point forward reflect who you are becoming, not what you have survived. Speak with clarity. Speak with conviction. Speak knowing that heaven responds when authority is activated, and every word aligned with truth carries the power to reshape your future.